The clock above the kitchen read 11:47 p.m. when Marcus finally set down the mop. His hands didn't just ache anymore, they trembled. The kind of tremor that comes from 12 hours of lifting, scrubbing, carrying, bending. 68 years old, and his body kept a detailed record of every shift. His knees sent sharp reminders with each step. His lower back had stopped asking for rest and started demanding it. "Hey, Marcus, let me get that for you." A young server named Danny reached for the industrial trash bag Marcus was dragging toward the back exit. The bag was half Marcus's size, stuffed with the remnants of another busy Friday night. Marcus waved him off with a gentle smile that had worn grooves into his weathered face. "I got it, son. You go on home." Danny hesitated, glanced at the other closing staff, then shrugged and headed out. As the door swung shut, Marcus heard the whispers. He always heard them. "Why does he still work, hey? Doesn't he have family? I heard he works doubles 3 times a week." Marcus pulled the bag through the back door, his grip tightening on the plastic. Not from anger, from necessity. His hands needed something to hold on to or they might not stop shaking. By the time he returned inside, the kitchen was nearly empty. Just him and Kevin, the night manager, counting the register in the small office. Marcus approached slowly, rehearsing the words he'd spoken 100 times but somehow never got easier. "Kevin." His voice was quiet, apologetic. "If there's any food left over, anything that's getting thrown out, would it be all right if I—" Kevin looked up from the cash drawer, his expression softening. "Yeah, Marcus. Of course. There's some grilled chicken from the dinner service and half a pan of roasted vegetables. Help yourself." "Thank you. I appreciate it." Marcus dipped his head slightly, the gesture of a man who understood the difference between charity and waste, even if it felt like a thin line. In the kitchen, he carefully wrapped the chicken in clean napkins, portioned the vegetables into a small plastic container someone had left behind. His movements were precise, reverent almost. This wasn't just food. This was tomorrow's breakfast. Maybe lunch too, split carefully. He tucked everything into his canvas bag, the same bag he'd carried for 6 years, stitched and restitched until the fabric was more thread than original material. Hunger, Marcus had learned, was temporary. A stomach could be trained to expect less, to stretch what it had. But being a burden, that was permanent. That stained your dignity in ways hunger never could. At 11:58 p.m., he clocked out, pulled on his thin jacket, and stepped into the November cold. The alarm would go off at 5:30 a.m. It always did. Marcus walked through the empty streets and let his mind drift backward, the way it often did during these late-night journeys. Memory was cheaper than distraction. He remembered signing the pension papers 26 years ago. His supervisor had smiled, clapped him on the shoulder. "You put in your time, Marcus, and the company takes care of you. That's the deal." The deal. Marcus had believed in deals back then. Believed that hard work equaled security, that loyalty was a two-way street. He'd watched his father work 40 years for the railroad and retire with dignity. That was the world Marcus thought he lived in. Then the company restructured. Then it restructured again. The pension fund was reallocated. His monthly check, the one he'd counted on, the one he'd earned, it shrank to a quarter of what was promised. Then to nothing. By then, Sarah was already sick. He could still see her face on the good days, when the chemo hadn't stolen all her color yet. She'd hold his hand and say, "We'll figure it out. We always do." They'd figured it out for 3 years. Sold the house. Moved into the apartment. Burned through savings that were supposed to last 2 decades. And then she was gone. The funeral was small. The bills were not. Now there was Emma, his granddaughter, 12 years old, his daughter's child. His daughter who'd loved the wrong man, who'd gotten lost in pills and desperation, who'd disappeared one winter and never came back. Emma had nowhere else to go. So Marcus made space, made promises, made sacrifices that didn't feel like sacrifices because what else was there? She needed medicine for her asthma. She needed school supplies. She needed a childhood that didn't taste like poverty. So Marcus worked. He set 3 alarms because his body sometimes ignored one. He stretched his aching joints in the shower, letting hot water he could barely afford ease muscles that never fully recovered. He ironed his uniform with the precision of a man who understood that appearance was half the battle when you were old and poor. Work was dignity. Asking for leftover food was necessity. Asking for pity was surrender. And Marcus had never surrendered to anything in his life. What he didn't know, what he couldn't have known, was that someone had been watching. Not with judgment, with curiosity and growing concern. James Harrington, CEO of Harrington Hospitality Group, had visited the downtown location 3 times in the past month. Each time, he'd seen the old man with the careful hands and the quiet gratitude. And each time, James had taken notes. 11:58 p.m. became midnight, became 12:07 a.m. as Marcus's shoes scraped against cold pavement. The bus stop glowed under a flickering streetlight 2 blocks back. He'd walk past it like he did every night, ignoring the bench, the route map, the $2.50 fare that might as well have been $250. 40 minutes on foot versus 8 minutes on the bus. The math was simple. The choice was simpler. His canvas bag hung from his shoulder, and he adjusted his grip every few minutes, making sure the food stayed level, stayed safe. The chicken and vegetables had become something precious during the walk, not just dinner, but proof that he could still provide, still bring something home. The city at midnight wasn't dangerous in this part of town. Just tired. Cracked sidewalks that caught his feet. Dim porches where lonely lights burned. A dog barking behind a chain-link fence. The distant sound of sirens, fading. Marcus knew this route in his bones. Every uneven slab of concrete. Every shortcut through parking lots. The corner where teenagers sometimes gathered but mostly left him alone. An old man wasn't worth their time. His back seized up at the intersection of Morrison and Fifth. He stopped, pressed his fist into his lower back, breathed through the spasm. 30 seconds. A minute. Then it eased enough to continue. He didn't see the black sedan that had been following 3 blocks back. Didn't notice when it paused at the intersection, idling. Didn't hear the window roll down as someone inside watched him resume his slow, determined walk. By the time Marcus reached his apartment building, his hands were numb from the cold. The building was a squat, gray structure that had been new in the 1970s and forgotten ever since. The exterior lights were broken more often than they worked. 23 steps to the 2nd floor. Marcus counted them like prayer beads. Each step cost something. Each step was earned. His keys shook when he finally pulled them from his pocket. Not fear, just exhaustion so complete it had soaked into his bones. He didn't know that someone was still watching from the street below. Didn't know that a man in an expensive coat was standing in the cold, staring up at the dim window, making decisions. The door opened to warmth. Not much, but enough. Marcus had learned to keep the thermostat at 64 degrees. Any higher and the bill became a problem. Grandpa. Emma looked up from the kitchen table, her math homework spread out under the single lamp they kept on after dark. She was small for 12, with her mother's dark eyes and her grandmother's stubborn chin. Hey, sweetheart. Marcus set his bag down carefully, shrugged off his jacket. You should be asleep. I wanted to wait up. She closed her textbook. Did they have food tonight? There it was, the question that broke him every time, even though he never let it show. Yeah, got some good stuff too. He unpacked the containers, divided the chicken and vegetables onto 2 plates. The portions weren't equal. They never were. You hungry? You didn't eat already. Had a big meal during my break. The lie came smooth, practiced. Manager insisted. You know how Kevin is. Emma smiled, believed him, and Marcus felt the familiar twist of guilt and relief. They ate together in comfortable silence. Emma told him about her science project, about the girl at school who'd been mean but then apologized, about her English teacher who said she had a talent for writing. Marcus listened, nodded, smiled. Let her voice fill the small apartment with something other than worry. When she finished, she carried her plate to the sink, then turned back to him. You're working tomorrow, right? The question landed like a punch he'd been expecting but still couldn't fully brace for. Of course. His voice stayed steady even as his hands trembled around his fork. You look tired, Grandpa. I'm always tired. Comes with being old. He tried to make it sound like a joke. Emma didn't laugh. After she went to bed, Marcus sat at the table in the dark. 5 minutes. That's all he allowed himself. 5 minutes to feel the weight of every hour, every shift, every aching step. Then he stood, washed the dishes quietly, set his alarm for 5:30 a.m. He soaked his hands in warm water, watching the swelling ease slightly. Folded his uniform and set it on the chair by the door. Checked that Emma's inhaler was on her nightstand. The alarm clock glowed in the darkness. 1:23 a.m. 4 hours until it started again. Marcus lay down and closed his eyes, but sleep was negotiable these days. His body hurt too much for deep rest. So he drifted in that space between consciousness and dreams, where Sarah's voice sometimes visited, where memories felt more real than the present. Tomorrow would come whether he was ready or not. It always did. The summons came during the morning prep shift. Kevin found Marcus in the stockroom, counting inventory. "Hey, Marcus, Mr. Harrington wants to see you in the office." Marcus's hands stopped moving. The clipboard he'd been holding suddenly felt heavy. "Mr. Harrington." His voice came out smaller than intended. "The CEO." "Yeah, is here today. Asked for you specifically." Marcus's mind raced through possibilities, landed on the worst one, termination. The food. He'd asked for food too many times. Become a liability, a problem they needed to solve. "Okay." He set down the clipboard, brushed off his apron. "I'll head up now." The walk to the administrative office felt longer than his walk home last night. Marcus tried to straighten his shirt, smooth his hair. 68 years old, and he was still trying to look employable, still trying to prove his worth. The receptionist smiled kindly. "Mr. Harrington is expecting you. Go ahead in." The office was modest. Harrington didn't believe in executive excess. Marcus had heard. A desk, some chairs, windows overlooking the city. James Harrington stood as Marcus entered, extended his hand. "Marcus, thank you for coming. Please, sit." Marcus shook the offered hand. Harrington's grip was firm but not crushing, and sat on the edge of the chair, back straight, hands folded in his lap. "Mr. Harrington, if this is about the food, I apologize. I didn't mean to." "It's not about that." Harrington's voice was calm, respectful. He sat across from Marcus, not behind his desk. Eye level. "I wanted to talk to you about something I've noticed." Marcus's heart hammered. This was it. The polite prelude to letting him go. "I work hard, sir. I never miss shifts. If there's been a complaint." "There hasn't been." Harrington leaned forward slightly. "Marcus, I've been watching you. Not in a bad way," he added quickly, seeing Marcus tense. "I've seen how you work, how you carry yourself, and I've seen you ask for food at the end of your shifts." Shame flooded Marcus's face. He looked down at his hands, these old, trembling hands that had built a life and watched it crumble. "I'm sorry. I can't stop." "I'm not asking you to stop." Harrington's voice was gentle but firm. "I'm asking you to help me understand. You work doubles 3 times a week. You're one of our most reliable employees. But you're also asking for leftover food." He paused. "Marcus, why are you still here?" The question hung in the air. Why was he still here? Because he had no choice. Because a 12-year-old girl needed medicine and school supplies and a future that didn't taste like his past. Because pension promises had turned to dust. Because pride was expensive but surrender cost more. Marcus's voice cracked. He cleared his throat, tried again. "I have responsibilities, sir. A granddaughter. And the pension I was promised, it didn't work out the way they said." "Who do you work for before us?" "Consolidated Manufacturing. 26 years. Harrington nodded slowly. "They restructured. 3 times. Marcus's jaw tightened. By the 3rd time, there wasn't much pension left to restructure. "And your granddaughter?" "Emma. She's 12. Her mother, my daughter, she's gone. So it's just me and Emma now." He met Harrington's eyes for the first time. "I'm not asking for charity, Mr. Harrington. I'm just asking for time. Time to keep working. To keep providing. I don't need pity. I just need a chance." Harrington finished quietly. Marcus nodded. The CEO sat back, silent for a long moment. Marcus could practically see the calculations happening, the cost-benefit analysis, the precedent this might set, the policies it might violate. I'm not going to fire you, Marcus. Relief flooded through him so powerfully his hands shook worse than before. But I'm going to do something, Harrington continued. And I need you to let me. I followed you home last night. Marcus blinked. So, I parked outside your building. Watched you climb those stairs. 23 of them. Harrington's expression was serious but not unkind. I sat in my car and thought about what kind of system lets a man like you work until midnight, walk 40 minutes home, then wake up and do it again. I don't mind the work. I know you don't. That's the problem. Harrington stood, moved to the window, looked out at the city. You know what I saw when I watched you? I saw my grandfather. He worked 3 jobs after the Depression wiped out his savings. Died at 72, still working, still refusing help. He turned back to Marcus. Pride kept him alive, and pride killed him. I don't want to watch that happen again. Marcus's throat tightened. What are you saying? I'm saying the system is broken. Not just here, everywhere. People who played by the rules, who worked their entire lives, who believed in promises. Harrington shook his head. They are abandoned. And we, companies, society, all of us, we pretend not to notice. With respect, sir, noticing doesn't pay Emma's medical bills. No, but action does. Harrington returned to his chair. Here's what I'm proposing. First, your schedule changes. No more doubles unless you choose them. Second, your hourly rate increases. Not huge, but enough to matter. Third, we set up an employee assistance fund. You'll be the first to access it, but you won't be the last. Marcus stared at him. Why? Because I can. Because it's right. And because, Harrington smiled slightly, when I go home tonight, I want to tell my kids that I did something that mattered. But the cost, the precedent, will be worth it. Harrington's voice firmed. I've already talked to our board. Some fought it. They talked about sustainability, about opening floodgates, about fiscal responsibility. You know what I told them? Marcus shook his head. I told them that if our business model only works by grinding people like you into dust, then we don't deserve to be in business. For the first time in years, maybe decades, Marcus felt something crack open in his chest. Not breaking, opening. I don't know what to say. Say you'll accept the help. Say you'll let me make this right. Harrington extended his hand again. You've earned this, Marcus. Not as charity, as justice. Marcus looked at the offered hand. At this man who'd followed him home, who'd seen him struggle, who'd decided that seeing wasn't enough. He shook it. Thank you, Marcus whispered. For Emma. Thank you. 3 months later, Marcus still worked at Harrington's downtown location. But now he worked 5-hour shifts, 5 days a week. His paycheck was larger. His back hurt less. His hands still trembled sometimes, but less from exhaustion, more from the simple reality of age. Emma's inhaler never ran out anymore. Her science project won second place at the school fair. She'd stopped asking if he was working tomorrow, not because she didn't care, but because she'd stopped worrying. The Employee Assistance Fund had helped 6 other workers so far. Quiet interventions. No press releases. No viral videos. Just dignity restored, one person at a time. Marcus still packed his canvas bag when he left work. But now it carried his lunch container, empty, washed. He ate during his shift. The break room always had food available now. Not leftovers, but meals. Subsidized. Accessible. On this particular Tuesday evening, Marcus clocked out at 6:47 p.m. Early enough to see daylight. Early enough to take the bus home. He could afford the fare now, but sometimes he still walked. Not because he had to, because the walk gave him time to think. Time to appreciate the weight lifting. Time to remember what struggle felt like so he never forgot how to recognize it in others. He passed the bus stop, kept walking, and let himself smile. At the apartment, Emma had dinner started. Spaghetti, her specialty. The thermostat read 68 degrees. Warm enough for comfort. How was work, Grandpa? Good. Quiet day. He hung up his jacket, washed his hands. How was school? Mr. Chen said my essay was the best in class. Pride swelled in Marcus's chest. That's my girl. They ate together, talked about nothing important and everything that mattered. When Emma went to do homework, Marcus sat at the table alone. But this time, he didn't sit in the dark. He turned on the lamp, pulled out the letter he'd been writing to James Harrington. A thank you note. Simple, heartfelt. The kind of thing a man writes when words feel insufficient but silence feels wrong. Dear Mr. Harrington, I'm not good with words, but I wanted you to know what your kindness has meant. Not just for me, but for Emma. For the future I can give her now. You didn't have to care. Most people don't. But you did. And that's made all the difference. Respectfully, Marcus Webb. He folded the letter, placed it in an envelope. Tomorrow, he'd work another shift. His body would ache. Age didn't negotiate. But the ache would be bearable, manageable. No longer the crushing weight of desperation. Marcus set his alarm for 7:30 a.m., a mercy he still couldn't quite believe. Before bed, he checked on Emma. She was asleep, her breathing steady and clay. He stood in the doorway for a moment, watching her, and felt something he hadn't felt in years. Not hope. Hope was too fragile a word. Security. The quiet confidence that tomorrow wouldn't destroy him. That he could protect what mattered. That maybe, just maybe, dignity and survival didn't have to be mutually exclusive. Marcus closed her door gently, walked to his own room, and lay down. 4 hours of sleep had become 7. And when the alarm finally sounded in the morning, he woke without dread. Just another day. But these days, that was enough.